Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Further, to continue with the deciphering of the Quran and my previous presentation, Origin of Life, today, with the knowledge bestowed on me by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let me unravel the event of evolution of life on earth with the help of Quran, Puranas and Genesis. The lone creator of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has explained the evolutionary process of life in Quran and other scriptures, but till today we fail to understand this as we are considering them only as religious books. We have seen in the previous presentation that how the life originated and understood the details up to the formation of two unicellular organisms which are called Adam and Eve. Today, let us continue from that point onwards and understand the further evolution of life on the earth. The process of evolution is a continuous process and it takes a lot of time to discuss in detail. The details of evolution are mentioned in multiple scriptures, but not all the details are provided in a single scripture. But Quran provides the details of evolution of life on the earth, and some of the important links which the scientists have failed to establish are also mentioned in it. In addition, we can understand the continuity of evolution by studying the sequence of appearance of prophets. Therefore, to keep the video short, I will mention only a few important events of evolution and request the science and religious scholars to join hands with me to discuss further details of the scriptures. First, let us recall few important points from the previous presentation, Origin of Life. The first formed live nucleus is mentioned as Hanuman, which later converted into a first formed unicellular organism, Paramecium, which is mentioned as Adam and its companion as Eve. They were thriving at the surface of the water bodies near the continents. Later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Adam and his wife to live in heaven and eat whatever they want, but not to venture near a particular tree, otherwise they will become transgressors. Finally, Shaitan provoked them to go near that tree and brought them to a new state from what they had earlier. Then God told them to go and live on the earth for an appointed time, as mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse number 35 to 36. Before moving further, first we should understand where heaven and earth is located. Here, in this context, the heaven represents the water surface where they were living and the earth represents the surface of the ocean floor. The act of provocation by Shaitan and bringing them to a new state indicate that by approaching near to the forbidden tree or eating from that tree has modified their physiology and metabolism. This might have happened because of the consumption of virus or paramecium coming in contact with virus, where virus is mentioned as Shaitan as shown in the previous presentation. Then they might have become heavy and moved down to the bottom of the ocean, which is referred as the earth, where they have to live for an appointed time. From here, the story of evolution of life begins. The statement, "He created you from a single organism and from it he created its companion." After their copulation, it became pregnant. As mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 189 indicate that till now the organisms were involved in an asexual reproduction, but later the organisms have multiplied through sexual reproduction. After this, many male and female organisms were spread all over the world, as mentioned in the chapter number 4, verse number 1. Out of these so many, only Habil and Qabil are mentioned in Quran, chapter number 5, verse number 27 to 32, indicating they are the earliest progeny of Adam and Eve. According to the chapter number 5, verse number 27 to 32, Qabil killed Habil. When Habil said, "Certainly I will kill you," Habil said, "Even if you raise your hand to kill me, I will not kill you," as mentioned in the chapter number 5, verse number 27 to 28. This indicates that now the organisms were divided into two important species, and one of species had developed hands like flagella or could be tentacles. This is affirmed by the statement, one is on the straight path and the other one is wrongdoers, as mentioned in chapter number 7, verse number 30. According to the chapter number 5, verse number 31, Allah sent a crow which was digging the earth. This indicates that at this time one more species was developed which started to live in burrows. The statement to hide your private parts and to protect you, we have provided you the clothes as mentioned in chapter number 7, verse number 26 indicate that during this time the organisms have started developing external cover or skin. After this, mollusk appeared, which is affirmed with the statement, we sent Noah towards his community as a warner as they were wrongdoers. Noah warned about the forthcoming deluge and requested his community to mount the ship, but later they abandoned their prophet. Then we saved Noah and his companions in a ship and drowned the others. Actually, they were blind, as mentioned in chapter number 7, verse number 59 to 64. More details about Noah are mentioned in chapter number 11, verse number 25 to 48, which indicate that there were two communities among them, where one is blind but had head and the other one had only sensory organs. The statement Noah built a ship under our guidance and supervision as mentioned in the verse number 36 to 38 indicate that the mollusks have started building the external shells which is mentioned as ship. The statement, the moving and stopping of the ship is under Allah's control, as mentioned in verse number 41, indicate that the mollusk had no limbs and they had an uncontrolled locomotion. It is mentioned in the chapter number 54, verse number 13, that the ship was built with wooden planks and nails, indicate that ridges and spines were present on the shells. All this information indicates that the Noah may represents the bivalvia and his community represents the bivalvia, brachiopods and trilobites. Here, the flooding might have caused due to the lava flow or water flow or a combination of both. Due to this, all those organisms which were not having shells were destroyed and erased from the geological records. In this picture, you can see Noah's Ark anchored to the Mount Judi as an enactment of this event for the earth, and the Prophet Noah led his life as the human enactment of this event and represent the mollusk. The act of anchoring of ship as mentioned in the verse number 41 indicates that after this event the mollusks have developed the pedicle which anchored them to the rocks. The story of the Prophet Manu is the Indian version of the story of Prophet Noah. According to the chapter number 7, verse number 65 to 72 and chapter number 11, verse number 50 to 60, after Noah, the prophet Hud was sent towards his community. In chapter number 7, verse number 69, where Hud is telling to his community that Allah has made you strong and made successor to Noah's community, indicate that they became dominant after Noah's community. Here, Hud and his community represents the corals, and during the earlier stages of the evolution of life, Hud represents the sponges. In this picture, you can see the top-blown houses of corals, which is left as a sign from the creator of the universe. When they rejected their prophet, Allah saved Hud and his companions but destroyed the non-believers by cutting their roots, indicate that the roots of the corals were cut off due to regression of the sea and earthquakes as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 72 and chapter number 11, verse number 60. According to the chapter number 7, verse number 73 to 79 and chapter number 11, verse number 61 to 68, after Hud, the prophet Saleh was sent towards his community. The statement, Allah has made you successor of Ad community. Now, you are constructing big mansions on the plains and converting the lofty mountains like mansions by drilling them as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 74, and the images shown by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this area suggest that the Samud community represents the insects and worms. The mansions constructed by drilling in the mountain represents the burrows created by these insects. According to the chapter number 7, verse number 73 and 77, chapter number 11, verse number 64 to 65, chapter number 26, verse number 155 to 157 mentions that a she-camel came as a sign from Allah and Prophet Saleh asked his community to allow it to graze at its will, but later his community bit its knees and hamstrung it. All this information and the images shown by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a sign indicate that a seahorse came into existence at this time, but the insects attacked its knees and hamstrung it or killed many, and because of this they evolved as limbless organisms. The insects who are followers of the Prophet Hud were destroyed by an earthquake, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 78. To keep the video short, I am not following the order of evolution from hereafter, though order is mentioned in Quran. The chapter number 7, verse number 80 mentions that Lut was sent towards his community, and in verse number 81, Lut telling to his community that you go to males instead of females for your needs, and certainly you are the wrongdoers. This information and the images shown by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates that Lut's community represents the seed-bearing, self-pollinating plants, gymnosperms, whereas Lut represents the proto-angiosperm plants, which later developed into flowering angiosperm plants. This is the image of the Prophet Lut. This is the image of tree representing the Prophet Lut, and here at the top of it, an image of two males is shown who are standing in an intimate position. According to the chapter number 7, verse number 84, these plants were destroyed by acid rains. There is a mention of Prophet Ibrahim at about the same time of Lut in the chapter number 11, verse number 69 to 76. This is the image of Ibrahim, which appears to have a rough, scaly skin, and the presence of egg-like structures at this place indicates that the Prophet Ibrahim represents the reptiles. According to the chapter number 11, verse number 71 and chapter number 14, verse number 37, the generation of Ibrahim continued through Isaac and Ismail, where Isaac may represent the seal-like organisms and Ismail represents a crab and are a reptile, as shown by the Creator. According to the book of Genesis, chapter number 11, verse number 29, chapter number 16, verse number 3, and chapter number 25, verse number 1, Abraham had three wives, Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. From them he begot his sons Isaac and Ishmael through Sarah and Hagar respectively, but there is no information regarding the sons of Keturah. But it is clearly mentioned that Abraham sent the sons of Keturah towards east, as mentioned in the Genesis chapter number 25, verse number 6. This information and the comprehension of other scriptures indicate that the details of sons of his third wife are available in Indian scriptures. All this information indicates that the tree of evolution is divided into three branches during this time. If the lineage of Ibrahim continued through three branches, one is through Isaac and the other through Ishmael, then what about the third branch? The third branch advanced through the sons of Keturah, which is depicted as Dashavatara of Vishnu. As you can see in this picture, the image of Ibrahim resembles the image of Narasimha, where the Narasimha represents a combination of mammals and reptiles in one form. This indicates that the mammals and reptiles evolve at the same time and the Prophet Ibrahim represents both. This also indicates that the Prophet Ibrahim is none other than the Prophet Narasimha. This indicates that there is no division of Abrahamic religion and non-Abrahamic religion exists. There is only one religion exists since the beginning, and that is Islam. Therefore, I request everyone to coexist with peace and harmony and worship Allah alone. In this picture, you can see a lion-like organisms which could be the image of first mammal. You can see many more images of mammals and reptiles are a combination of both in this area. According to the chapter number 6, verse number 84, chapter number 21, verse number 72, chapter number 29, verse number 27, Ibrahim was bestowed with Ishaq and later Yaqub. According to the chapter number 12, verse number 84, the eyes of Yaqub turned white and the images shown as a sign in this picture indicate that Yaqub may represent the primates. After Lut, the dominant community was represented by Shoaib, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 85 and chapter number 11, verse number 84, where it is stated that we sent their brother Shoaib towards Madian community. In the chapter number 7, verse number 85 to 86 and chapter number 11, verse number 84 to 85, the Prophet Shoaib telling to his community not to cheat in weight and measures and keep your balance properly. Do not defraud people of their property, nor go about spreading corruption in the land. Do not lie in ambush on every road threatening those who believe. All this information indicates that the community of Shoaib is Tartais and the Madian Plains represent the North America. As you can see in this slide, an image of a tortoise is carved out of North American continent as a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Indian scriptures, this is mentioned as Kurmavatara, which is a second incarnation of Prophet Vishnu. The first incarnation is the Matsya avatar, representing the fish as shown in this slide. After this, Musa was sent towards Pharaoh and his followers as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 103 and chapter number 11, verse number 96 to 97. A lengthy narration is there about Musa in chapter number 2, verse number 40 to 95 and chapter number 7, verse number 103 to 178. But to keep the video short, I am mentioning only the important points and summarizing the story. According to the details mentioned in this story, Musa represents the gastropods and Pharaoh and his companions represent the Ammonites. When the Pharaoh asked Musa to show his signs, Musa threw his staff which became snake. This indicates that an unidentified organism present in the hand of Musa, as you can see in this picture, has evolved into snakes. Later, when the Pharaoh arranged a competition between Musa and his magicians, the magicians threw their ropes which were appearing like snakes, but Musa's staff, which really became snake, has followed their false snakes. This indicates that the magicians represent the ancestors of lizards, where their tails represent the ropes. Later, when the magicians believed in the God of Musa and became Muslims, the Pharaoh said that, "I will cut your limbs from opposite sides and hang you up." Then they said, "We will return towards our Lord," as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 120 to 126. This indicates that they evolved into lizards and lost a pair of limbs from the opposite sides and then became climbers of trees during this time. The chapter number 7, verse number 133 mentions that God sent the storms of locusts, insects and frogs, meaning during this time the locusts, some of the insects and frogs evolved. The chapter number 7, verse number 136 and 138 and chapter number 10, verse number 90 states that Allah made Israelites to safely go across the sea and drowned the Pharaoh and his companions. This indicates that the Ammonites were destroyed by submergence and the gastropods migrated to the land during this time. The chapter number 7, verse number 142 states that he recalled Musa for 40 days, indicates that for a specific time some of the gastropods were absent. The chapter number 7, verse number 145 states that we gave scriptures in the form of stone planks to Musa, indicates that the gastropods developed sutures and other markings on the shells. It is mentioned in the chapter number 20, verse number 27 to 28 that Musa requesting Allah to make his tongue thin or unknotted. All this information indicates that the gastropods Pyrus could be the one which represents the Prophet Musa. You can see an image of Pyrus in this slide, which is created by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a sign. The chapter number 7, verse number 148 states that during the absence of Musa, his people made a statue of calf from their ornaments, which was making a sound of cow, and started worshipping it. This indicates that during this time the conch shells are developed and became dominant species. The verse number 148, 152 and 153 of chapter number 7 mentions that those who worship the calf are wrongdoers and they will face the anger of their Lord. If they regret for their mistakes and accept the true faith, then their Lord will pardon them as he is the most forgiver and kind. Therefore, I request all those who worship cow as God to stop worshipping it and ask forgiveness in Allah, who is the lone creator of the universe, and become the true followers of his teachings. As I have mentioned in my previous presentation, the name Ishwar, Bhagavan, Yahweh, God and Allah are all different names of the lone creator of the universe. The chapter number 7, verse number 159 and 160 mentions that there was a group among the people of Musa who were on the right path, and God divided them into 12 families. This indicates that the rightly guided gasopods were divided into 12 families during this time. During this time, as mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse number 57 and chapter number 7, verse number 160, the Creator Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided food such as salwa and manna. As stated in the chapter number 2, verse number 58 and chapter number 7, verse number 161, Almighty Allah granted a new land and ordered them to enter into a new city with bowed head and telling Hitta Hitta while entering, and be obedient to Allah and eat only the lawful food, so that He will forgive their sins and provide more sustenance. But they changed the word which was told to them and get deviated from the right path, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 162. Moreover, an oath is taken from Israelis not to kill and not to expel the other community organisms from their homes, as mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse number 84. But the Israelis disobeyed the God, and till today they are killing the other organisms and expelling them out of their houses, as mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse number 85. As a result, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is none other than the Yahweh, has punished them by sending sufferings from the sky, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 162. Moreover, because of this disobedience, Allah has declared that He will continuously send the troublemakers towards the Israelis till the doomsday, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 167. All this information indicates that the newly formed 12 species started flourishing in the forests and lakes, where the salwa and manna represents the selva forest and saltwater lakes of Mediterranean region, respectively, as shown in this slide. The Creator ordered some of the species representing the Israelis to coexist with the burrowing organisms, but they disobeyed the God and not only expelled the burrowing organisms from their burrows, they killed them as well. Because of this disobedience, the Creator Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the sufferings from the sky in the form of acid rain and meteorites. Moreover, the Creator has promised that He will send the suffering from the sky till the doomsday for these disobedient organisms. The present Israel-Palestine crisis is a human enactment of this event. This is the reason why some of the Palestinian people representing the burrowing organisms have dug the tunnels and using them as shelters. And the major mode of attack on Israel is from the sky. As a human enactment of this event, the Israelis are killing the Palestinian people and expelling them from their homes. Therefore, I request both the warring parties once again to understand the real cause of the conflict and stop the war immediately. Otherwise, as the Creator has promised, you will suffer the punishment till the doomsday, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 162 and 167. You may ask, what is the benefit of stopping the war? Listen carefully. The benefit of stopping the war and coexisting together is beyond your expectations. If you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wholeheartedly and do good deeds and follow the right path, you will be pardoned by Yahweh, and He will give more sustenance, as mentioned in the chapter number 20, verse number 82 and chapter number 7, verse number 161. Moreover, you may attain Jannah, the heaven, by keeping faith in Allah, practicing namaz, giving zakat, and following Prophet Muhammad, as mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse number 43, and chapter number 7, verse number 156 to 157. Now, let us understand the details regarding the human evolution. After some time, the earlier mentioned good group of followers of Moses also followed the wrong path, and because of this, as a punishment, Allah made them monkeys, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 166, chapter number 5, verse number 60, and chapter number 2, verse number 65. This indicates that this is the advent of simians. According to the chapter number 7, verse number 168, these simians are diversified into several species and spread across the earth. Later, two important groups were formed from them as jinn and humans, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 179. The chapter number 7, verse number 189 and 190 mentions that Allah created man from a single species and from it he also created its companion. Later, when man copulated with a woman, she became pregnant. She was carrying it along with her while moving. When it became heavy, they both prayed to Allah to grant a male child so that they will be grateful to Him. Later, when Allah granted them a male child, they associated others with Allah. This is the beginning of the advent of human species. All these events took place in the southern India, similar to the origin of life as shown in the previous presentation, Origin of Life. The earlier mentioned man and woman are the parents of Prophet Hanuman, and as shown in the following slides, this is the mother of Hanuman who is having a light pregnancy, and she carried the baby from this side to the other side of the India where it is shown with full pregnancy. This is the place of birth of Prophet Hanuman. Prophet Hanuman is the first transformation to the simians, which is an intermediate form of monkeys and simians. This is the reason why the Prophet Hanuman is portrayed as ape man in Ramayana. The Ramayana indicate that during this time two types of proto-simians were present representing Bali and Sugriva, where Hanuman has transformed from Sugriva group. The Creator Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is expressing His displeasure in the verse number 190 and 195 of chapter number 7 by mentioning that in response to the prayers of Hanuman's parents when he granted a male child, they associated others with him. Therefore, I request everyone who associate others with Allah to rectify the mistake by not associating others with Him and worship Him alone and pray for forgiveness, as He is very compassionate, merciful, and a great forgiver, as mentioned in the verse number 167, so that we all can get moksha, the salvation, and get a place in the Swarga, the heaven. For a long time, the partially transformed simian who represents Hanuman was alone, but later it developed into a completely transformed simian as an ancestor of humans, which is mentioned as Adam. Later, a companion was created from the same species who is called the Eve, as mentioned in the chapter number 30, verse number 21, where it is mentioned that he created a companion among your category so that you will get peace and love. As you can see in the picture, the Eve was created around the northern region of West Asia, who migrated to North India. This is the reason why multiple migrations were noticed in the history from this land and its adjacent places to India as a human enactment of this event. This is the reason why the western disturbance winds are flowing from Mediterranean region to North India. Allah asked the Adam and Eve to live in this land and eat whatever they want except from the forbidden tree, as mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse number 35 and chapter number 7, verse number 19. Here in this picture you can see the shaitan, Adam and Eve near the forbidden tree. The chapter number 20, verse number 120 says that Shaitan deceitfully told to Adam and Eve that, O Adam, shall I show you a plant which provides eternal life and vast kingdom? This indicates that the forbidden tree is the banyan tree, and after eating its fruits, their vision and intellect improved, as it is mentioned in the book of Genesis, chapter number 3, verse number 5. When you eat that fruit, your eyes will open. As a result, they are ready to move down from the trees and explore the surroundings and started to live on the ground, which is stated as Allah has banished them from the heaven and told them to go down from the heaven, as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 24 and chapter number 20, verse number 123. It is mentioned in the chapter number 20, verse number 116 to 119 that because of the facilities present here, you will not feel hunger and nakedness. And you will not be thirsty, nor will you be exposed to the sun, indicate that the canopy of forest is figuratively mentioned as heaven. This entire land of India and Africa is the garden of the heaven. Here you can see many images of Adam and Eve in this area. Here, at this region of northern India, they copulated and gave birth to their children Habil, Kabil, and their co-born sisters, as shown in the following slides. In these slides, you can see the pictures of Adam and Eve, Habil and Kabil, and their co-born sisters. After this, the same story continues for the human evolution too, that mentioned earlier for the other organisms. The sapiens underwent evolutionary changes as the time progressed, which is indicated by the change of prophets. Here, the Abraham represents the human-like ancestral sapiens as shown in this slide, to whom Ismail, Isaac, and sons of Keturah were born, indicating there were three branches of sapiens. This is the beginning of the Stone Age man, as we can understand from the verses related to Abraham as mentioned in the chapter number 26, verse number 69 to 77, that during the time of Abraham, people were worshipping stones, indicating that the stones were very important at this time. Here, the prophet Ibrahim is shown with the Narasimha stance, which indicate that during this stage, the ancestors of humans attempted to stand on two legs. Later, the sapiens are developed into two subspecies representing the Moses and Harun through Isaac and Jacob as shown in this slide. By keeping in mind the interest of common people who may also watch this video, I am avoiding the usage of scientific names. The chapter number 26, verse number 105 to 120 explains about the story of Noah, which indicate about the prevalence and destruction of mollusks for the second time, and the sapiens experienced the Noah's deluge during this time. Further verses from 123 to 140 explains the story of Hud. The verse number 128 to 130 states that unnecessarily you are constructing a mansion at every elevated place. You are building a high-rise mansions as if you are staying here forever. And when you cease like a tyrant. And verse number 131 to 134 mentions that you be scared of Allah who has provided you animals, progeny, gardens and lakes. All this information indicate that the Prophet Hud and his community represents the migratory birds as well as human ancestors. This also suggests that after this, the sapiens migration started. The chapter number 26, verse number 141 onwards explains the story of Prophet Saleh. The verse number 146 to 152 mentions that, will you be spared to live peacefully here among the existing things like gardens, streams, fields and dateyards? For show off, you build houses by boring the mountains. Be scared of Allah and follow me. Do not follow those miscreants. They created unease in the earth and do not take up any moderation work. All these details and the images shown in this slide indicate that the Prophet Saleh and his community represent insects and flies in addition to human ancestors. Later, when his community asked him to bring some signs, he brought a camel and asked them not to harm it, otherwise a great torment may fall on them, as mentioned in the verse number 155 to 156. But they bit its knees, as mentioned in the verse number 157. All this information indicate that this is the time of advent of camels. The chapter number 26, verse number 160 to 172 and chapter number 27, verse number 54 to 58 explains the story of Prophet Lut. As mentioned earlier, the Prophet Lut represents the flowering plants, and during this time there was one more episode of angiosperm plant addition in the course of life. The chapter number 26, verse number 176 to 189 explains the story of Prophet Shoaib. The verse number 181 to 183 states that, give full measure and cause no loss to others. Weigh with an even balance and do not defraud people of their property, nor go about spreading corruption in the land. All this information indicates that Shoaib represents the dinosaurs. Here, one can see many different types of dinosaurs carved out of North American continent, suggesting once many different types of dinosaurs roamed on this part of the earth. This is an image of Shoaib representing a dinosaur. This is mentioned as Vamana avatar in Indian scriptures, where the Vamana was of small stature in the beginning but grew to a gigantic stature at the end, referring the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs were destroyed by the meteoric impact as mentioned in the chapter number 26, verse number 189. Now come back to the human evolution and see what happened to the humans in the chain of evolution after this. After Moses, higher knowledge was provided to Dawood and Suleiman as mentioned in the chapter number 27, verse number 15. This is the image of Dawood and Suleiman. And they said, We thank Allah for granting us superiority over other faithful slaves. This indicates that the humans have become dominant species by this time. The Prophet Suleiman said, "We have been taught the language of birds, and all kinds of things are provided to us," as mentioned in the chapter number 27, verse number 16. This indicates that the humans have developed speech during this time and they were communicating to each other in the form of bird sounds. This is mentioned as melodious flute sound which was played by the Krishna, where the Prophet Krishna is mentioned as Suleiman in Quran. During this time, the earth experienced an event of glaciation and also lions evolved during this period, which is explained in the chapter number 27, verse number 20 to 44 through the story of Suleiman and Queen Sheba. The image of Queen Sheba is shown in this slide where she represents a lioness. This is confirmed from the verses 24 and 33 where it is mentioned that she and her followers were prostrating in front of sun instead of Allah, and we are brave and strong. Here, in this context, the male lions with manes are compared with the sun. The verse number 44 mentions that when Queen Sheba came to the place of Suleiman, she was asked to enter into the palace. When she saw it, she raised the bottom of her pants, thinking that it is a lake. Then Suleiman said, "It is a smooth glass floor." This indicates that during this time that place was experiencing a glaciation and the smooth glass floor represents the glaciers. This also indicates that during this time the body hair of lions were moved upwards from the ankles or their legs become hairless. Here the Prophet Suleiman also represents birds. During this time or slightly earlier to this time, lions also migrated to India, which is explained in the scripture Ramayana, where the Prophet Rama represents the lion which migrated to India from Africa. The Prophet Rama is mentioned as Dulkifl in Quran, chapter number 21, verse number 85, where it is said that Dulkifl is a man of patience. Yes, the Ramayana explains how the lions migrated to India in addition to the human migration to India and migration of Indian peninsula to its present position from African continent. The details of migration of Indian continent from Africa shall be discussed in one of the future presentations, inshallah. The chapter number 21, verse number 80 mentions that we taught Dawood how to make iron case from smelting iron to protect oneself during war. This indicates that the Prophet Dawood represents the humans of Iron Age and also represents the mammoths as shown in this slide. The Prophet Ganesha is mentioned as Idris in Quran, chapter number 21, verse number 85, where it is said that Idris is a man of patience and the Prophet Ganesha represents the modern elephants. After Dawood and Suleiman, there is mention of Saleh and Lut again, which indicate that during this time there was one more episode of addition of insects and flowering plants in the geological history of the earth. During this time, 9 types of insects were existing on the earth, which were divided into 2 groups as nocturnal and diurnal insects groups, as mentioned in the chapter number 27, verse number 45, 48, and 49. The chapter number 3, verse number 45 to 59 mentions the story of Mary and Jesus. The details of these verses and the images created by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as signs shows that the Mary represents the penguin and the Prophet Jesus represents the bat in addition to the most recent human ancestors. These are the images of Mary and Jesus in the form of penguin and bats. This is one more image of Jesus and bat as shown by the creator of the universe. Jesus also represents the solar flares, and these solar flares are the one which rekindled the life in the dead and blind organisms and plants at the end of the global glacial period, which is stated as Jesus has brought the dead into life and cured blindness, etc. in the chapter number 3, verse number 49 and chapter number 5, verse number 110. This also indicates that during the glaciation, few organisms became blind, few became dead, and few suffered from leprosy. It is mentioned in the chapter number 3, verse number 55, that the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lifted Jesus back towards him. This indicates that initially the bats were living on the ground and later they were lifted towards the sky and started living on the trees. The act of crucifixion of Jesus signifies the hanging of bats on trees. Let me add one more thing here. the second coming of Jesus indicate that there will be second coming of solar flares in the near future. And this also indicate that there will be an interference of bats in the animal life, including humans, in near future. COVID-19 is one such event that already occurred in the human life, whose virus is believed to be mutated from bats. More details are there in one of my earlier presentation, Jesus is coming soon. The modern man is represented by the Prophet Muhammad, to whom this Quran is revealed. The Prophet Muhammad also represents the modern horses as shown in this slide. This is the reason why the Prophet Muhammad had a great stamina. It is mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 158 that keep faith and follow the illiterate prophet who keeps faith on Allah and his orders. Here, the meaning of illiterate is to represent the horses without any markings on it in the form of stripes or patches, unlike Noah and Moses, who represents the mollusk on whose shells there were body markings as we have seen earlier. Finally, the advanced, logical, knowledgeable, and intelligent human beings of the present time represent the culmination of the evolution of life on earth and are represented by the next messenger who is known as Kalki, Mahdi, Mashiach, Messiah, etc. in different regions of the world. This is an image of Mahdi for earth shown as a sign by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Mahdi of human form is expected to come shortly. It is believed that the Kalki, who is none other than the Mahdi, will come on a horse. See, his image is shown on a horse as you can see in this slide. It is also believed that his face will appear on moon. See, his face is carved out in the African continent which appears like a crescent moon. It is believed that he will bring a new beginning and a better place to live, inshallah. Yes, we are shortly going to witness an important geological event as we are on the brink of one more mass extinction in the geological history of the earth. There were many minor and major mass extinctions in the earth's history. During these events, only a particular group of organisms were allowed to survive as we have understood in this presentation. Scientists call this as survival of fittest, but in fact, this is the survival of the faithful. Therefore, I request everyone to become faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship Him alone and follow His instructions to survive the forthcoming mass extinction event. It is confirmed from all the details discussed till now that all the organisms evolved from a single organism. This is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you all are one, as mentioned in the chapter number 21, verse number 92. This is mentioned as incarnation and avatar in the Indian scriptures, where the evolution of life is explained in the form of Dashavatara of Vishnu. In simple terms, the meaning of avatar is form. The Dashavatara explains the different forms of life on earth. The table shown in the following slide is the true representation of the incarnation of Vishnu and the correct mention of the prophets based on the facts explained above and their representative rock formations. There is a confusion regarding the 8th and 9th avatar of Vishnu. Let me clarify today that the 8th avatar is the Prophet Krishna and the 9th avatar is the Prophet Muhammad. This is the correct order of evolution of life on the earth, and the story of individual avatar explains the evolutionary history of that particular organism. This is an image of Varaha avatar, and this is an image of Prophet Parashurama, who represents the aurochs from which all the cattle evolved. This is an image of Prophet Krishna, and this is an image of bird representing Krishna. The Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Narasimha, Parashurama, Rama, Krishna, Ganesha and Hanuman are all prophets and they are called as Devata in India, where the word Devata is synonymous to prophet. Therefore, I request everyone to worship the Creator instead of a created one as mentioned in the chapter number 7, verse number 190 to 198, chapter number 19, verse number 65 and chapter number 21, verse number 25. More details concerning prophets are there in some of the previous presentations like prophets revealed, Ramayana and Mahabharata are real. All this information proves that indeed in this Quran our mention is there and it contains the details of our evolution as mentioned in the chapter number 21 verse number 10, which says, indeed we have sent down a book to you, in it your mention is there. As mentioned in the chapter number 27, verse number 93, Allah has kept His promise by showing His signs, and we have witnessed some of His signs in this presentation. Therefore, I request all the people of the world to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their Lord and worship Him alone. Also request you to coexist with peace and harmony with everyone. All this information implies that the religion is not different than science and science is not different than religion. They go hand in hand and they are intertwined. To keep the video short, I could not accommodate all the details of the evolution of life in this presentation. To understand the evolution of life on Earth more clearly, we have to decipher other scriptures as well. For example, the Exodus and Book of Numbers provides more details of gastropods, whereas the Psalms of David provides details of mammoths. Therefore, I request the science and religious scholars to join hands with me to decipher all the scriptures of the world and spread the true knowledge of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a right spirit. Peace be upon on all these prophets and all praises to Allah alone. This is my honest interpretation of the scriptures, but the true knowledge lies with Allah alone. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.